Insanity. I've never seen anything like that. As chalk.
That's like peak Jaren Jackson from a few years ago.
It really is. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Monday, January 23rd. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by PrizePicks. We've got a 7-game slate today. We've got a fantastic week of slates. I think tomorrow's 6. We get a 10 on Wednesday, which is big, but it's the upper end of manageable. I think we only have like a 4 or a 5 gamer on Friday. We've got a really nice week of DFS ahead of us. So I'm excited for it. I hope you guys are as well. Show me how excited you are by hitting that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow both of us on Twitter. That would be helpful as well. Our screen names are underneath our bodies, I assume. Adam, what's up? How's your weekend?
It was good. Football went relatively well. Basketball was whatever, lost a little bit yesterday. It was a good weekend. How was yours?
No complaints. Very relaxing. Recharge the old batteries, which is something that was very, very necessary. I thought it was very interesting to see that once again, DraftKings whiffed on MMA, and completely broken product that was awesome before is just as broken as it was before. They got to end it, right? I haven't seen a single person be like, man, this is working as intended. Really happy they made this switch.
Yeah, I mean, you would think with the fact that they just can't figure out how to make it work. It would be one thing if it was working the way it was intended. Nobody liked it, but whatever, they have their reasons they wanted to do it. But if you're just having to cancel every single MMA slate, how much longer can you do this?
Basically every single person that heavily plays MMA that has any sort of, I don't even want to say influence on Twitter, but the entire industry is against this. No one out there is treating this well. Everybody's adding DK assistant or whatever the hell the Twitter account is to be like, yo, this really sucks. I don't understand what's happening. Does it have to just be bigger than what we think it is?
I mean, I don't know. I'm sure they have reasons for preferring late swap, I guess. I don't know what they are, but I don't know. I think if it was working, it would be difficult to get them to change their mind because they just seem to want it for whatever reason, but it's not working.
It is not working at all. I want this thing to be okay for when we get to the John Jones fight. We've got Islam and Volk coming up in 2 or 3 weeks. I don't think we're going to get saved by that point. I mean, we got Cheeto Vera, Corey Sandhagen the week after that. There are fun ass cards, but then we get John Jones, Cyril Gane, March 4th. That's a real card. Bo Nickel on that card as well. I want to play MMA DFS again, and they need to get their shit together by March.
Yeah. I mean, Greg said that one of his DK guys said that there have been talks about getting rid of it at least. So
good. They should. It has not worked successfully yet. It's over and over again. Just an absolute tire fire. Well, shout out to Eric Lindquist, by the way. I do want to give him the shout last night. He had some interest in Thomas Bryant, and boy, oh boy, did that work out well for him. I don't know how it worked out for him financially, but Thomas Bryant absolutely smashed and finally got the minutes that he had not been getting as of late. So just want to give a quick shout out there. We got 7 games ahead of us. Lots to talk about. Not the worst slate in the world. I've already gone through it a bit on the process show, but ready to do it now with you. You ready?
Marcus Imparo said, when was the last time DK changed the rules back to where it was originally? The 2 immediate examples I can think of were they got rid of NBA late swap for a season and brought it back. And they had briefly, I don't remember, I think turned an outfielder into a utility player in MLB, very briefly, and everybody lost their minds and they put it back how it was.
That I can't even picture because I was always playing FanDuel at that point. Righty, let's do this. The Milwaukee Bucks are 11.5-point favorites in Detroit. If you ever wanted to know how bad Detroit was, they're double-digit underdogs in their own home, 228 total. And for Milwaukee, we got everybody. This is a full-strength Milwaukee Bucks squad. Chris Middleton, probable. Giannis back after having missed the previous 5 games. And this one makes it really difficult to want to go to Milwaukee. We have to assume Chris Middleton is going to be limited. He played like 26 minutes when he made his season debut this year before ultimately having to get shut back down again. Giannis has been out for 5 games. They're, almost 2 touchdown favorites against not the Lions. There's no ownership here. 3% to Giannis is the high mark on DK, 4.7 on FanDuel. I can't really justify a single thing for Milwaukee based on their pricing and based on how everybody's back.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much just the usual, like, if you land on Giannis, great, but he's pulling 3% ownership with a 5% chance of being optimal. Just, kind of speaks to it being a low probability play, even though he is obviously really, really good. But, you have Drew at 9K now having to play with Giannis and Middleton. That's clearly not the correct price. Portis is priced up. Lopez is at 6K. I have no interest in this team really, unless I just happen to get a little bit of Giannis.
Yeah, like I don't have a single share of anybody from the dummy crunch that I ran. I think Brook Lopez is probably the easiest guy to get just because I don't think anything really changes for him other than like his price is just, at 6K, but fantasy point per minute guy playing about 30 minutes. Like if I'm going to roll the dice on anyone, I think it's probably Brook Lopez. I can't imagine they're just going to like run Giannis into the ground in this spot at 11-8. I have to assume that Middleton is limited. It's just gross across the board. So easy to talk about for Milwaukee. Less easy to talk about Detroit, unfortunately. I hate situations like this where it looks like you can play a bunch of guys from the team that's projected to get their asses handed to them. Q tag on Killian Hayes. No beef stew for today. Isaiah Stewart out, and then obviously Bagley still out for a while. We've got 10% ownership or more going to Bogdanovich, Ivy, and Hamidou Diallo. And then Jalen Duren, who should be get the biggest benefit of having no beef stew here. 30% owned as a $4,500 center on DK today. Let's start with Duren. I assume we're in the agreement that he'll be starting today. How many minutes can we expect out of Jalen Duren?
28, 30.
Yeah, I went to 28. Obviously looks like a really interesting option. Scares the hell out of me in this spot, though.
Yeah, the spot is certainly scary, but if he can stay on the floor and avoid fouls, he should play a lot of minutes here at a cheap price tag and obviously a good point per minute guy.
Yeah. Thoughts on Nerlens Noel as a backup option here? I assume we get Duren and Noel basically splitting every minute they can at center.
Yeah, I mean, my expectation if you don't get Duren foul trouble, again, is like 28-20. 20 going to Noel. But if you do get foul trouble, Noel should be the one to pick it up. I'm still not really that interested in going there. Like he's a 0.8 to 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy. He's 3,600 at center. I probably won't need to.
This is going to sound really weird, but like, is Nerlens Noel today really all that different than he was for that 3 or 4 game stretch 2 weeks ago when he was the starting center? Because I feel like he's just going to play the same amount of minutes no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, when he started, you at least had that like chance that he was going to play 4 full rotations, and then typically just didn't. But I mean, it's obviously he projected a little bit better when he started, but it's not entirely different.
Yeah. Like he's completely unowned, and I'm not saying that like anybody should have a lot of Nerlens Noel, but he does not project all that differently. And if you think that Jalen Duren even sniffs any foul trouble here against the Bucks, and you can project Noel for like 22 minutes, he's the same play that he was last week at like 40% ownership.
So right now we only have him projected for like 10 DraftKings points, so we only have him in for 12 minutes. I assume that's going to change because we have, I guess we just have Sadiq Bey playing center for 6 minutes, which he could, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, the more likely, they can do whatever they want here. They're not likely to win this game. It's not likely to be a competitive game for very large swaths of it. I guess that could happen. Maybe. I don't know. It's gross, man. It's really gross. Let's talk about the rest of these guys, though, because I do find Bogdanovich, Ivy, Hayes, Bey to be interesting plays. I don't necessarily know if I like one more than the other, but assuming Killian Hayes is in, like, I think one of those guys is a good bet to be pretty good today.
Or at least have the opportunity. I mean, this team could just score 70 points. But all of, Bogdanovich, Ivy, Hayes not pulling ownership right now because he's questionable, but that'll come up. They're all just like 9 to 15% owned, and I think that's reasonable. The price tags look pretty much correct, but if this is a competitive game, you're likely getting low to mid 30s from Hayes. You're likely getting around 30 from Ivy, low 30s from Bogdanovich. I don't have any issue with those guys.
Nah, neither do I. It's just, these are the types of games that I really, really dislike.
Yeah.
Getting on the opposite, like getting big underdog teams where like it seems like it looks okay, but in the grand scheme of things, they might all play 26 minutes today.
Yeah. I don't totally get why Amadou Diallo is pulling 10% ownership.
No idea. Shooting guard, small forward, 4,200. Not a ton of value out there on the slate right now. He's just one of those things that like fit together until 1 o'clock when we get an injury report and it all looks different, is my guess.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, he played 21 minutes last game. Maybe he plays a little bit more without Stewart, but at that ownership, like he's just one of those guys. If he were like 2 or 3% owned, I would have some interest because like there are ways for him to get there. Whether it's he picks up a few extra minutes with Stewart out, or this game turns into a blowout and he plays the whole fourth quarter. Like there's a lot of there are paths, but if he's going to be 10 to 15% owned already, I don't really see the advantage in going there.
Yeah, he came out of my sim at 6%. I got 3%. But like that all seems pretty reasonable to me. I don't have anything else here for the Pistons. Tricky team today. Well, I guess we should hit on one thing. What do you want to do here if Killian Hayes happens to be out?
So I don't know who would start, but it would make Hayes or it would make Ivy look a little bit better.
Yeah. Think they go to Joseph?
Yeah, I mean it could be Joseph at 3K, in which case, good luck. It could be Diallo.
Yeah. It's going to create a little, like a pretty sizable chunk of value somewhere if he happens to be out, because I mean Hayes does play a ton now.
Yeah, and I think it would increase some assist potential for Jaden Ivey as well.
I assume his true shooting, when even more guys are off, buries him in like the mid 40s or something awful.
Seems like
I got nothing else here for this one. So let's hit quickly on the schedule for the rest of the day, which is kind of easy. At 3:30, you have the No House Advantage NBA show. That's going to be Laffy and Neal today. So make sure you're checking that one out. You guys missed out on giant overlay on No House Advantage yesterday. I know football overlaid. The NBA contest was half filled when Eric and I finished up live before lock last night. NBA Deeper Dive will be back at 5 p.m. That's going to be Adam. You'll get NBA Live Before Lock at 6 p.m. So that covers our live shows for the day. And now I think you guys should go sign up at Stokastic if you've never done it before. 5 days free. Link in the description. You'll also likely see it in chat. That'll get you access to our projections, our ownership tool, the boom bust tool, which is going to tell you like how often people hit their target score, how often they're in the optimal lineup, their leverage. All of that data is in the Boom Bust tool. You get our player compare tool. So that's going to be our 1v1s and 2v2s with all of that advanced data also on the table for you, along with our brand new lineup generator. That's going to be great for anybody playing like 20 or less lineups. We'll generate thousands upon thousands of lineups for the slate. We'll throw all of the ones that we think stink directly into the trash. We let you pick between everything else that we have left. If you want a balanced build, a chalky build, a contrarian build, you can swap out individual players if you want. I think you guys should check it out. If you've never done it before, 5 days free of Stokastic Plus Platinum NBA edition. So it's only for the NBA. You don't get everything. I probably named that thing incorrectly, but whatever. It's just for the NBA. Boston Celtics, 7-point favorites in Orlando, 229 total. Lots to talk about here. Marcus Smart out with a right ankle sprain. Malcolm Brogdon out, personal reasons. Jason Tatum is available. We have a Q tag on Robert Williams, but I'm going to put it out there right now. I think we should be projecting Robert Williams to be out for today. He got hurt on Saturday, left the game early, played 15 minutes. This is the front end of a back-to-back for Boston. They play Miami tomorrow. He sat out the front end of a back-to-back last week. I see no reason that Robert Williams is going to play today after taking a knock on Saturday and then sit out tomorrow. That makes no sense to me. I am projecting Robert Williams out for right now, which means 3 legitimate rotation pieces out for Boston, if what I'm saying is true. We're seeing big ownership coming into Peyton Pritchard at 3,300. Jason Tatum is at 17%. Jaylen Brown is at 8 I would like to flip-flop those two guys, but we'll talk about it. Derek White should see extra minutes. He's 16% owned. Start wherever you want with Boston. What stands out?
There's just a lot of minutes available. So right now we have Pritchard pulling 26% ownership on DraftKings. He's 3,300. It's always scary when Peyton Pritchard pulls ownership because Boston typically doesn't look to give him that many minutes. But without Smart and without Brogdon, you'd think he needs to be out there for, at least like low 20s.
So they only have 10 active bodies today, if I'm right about Robert Williams. So even then, he really does have to get those minutes.
Right. So he's at 3,300 is going to project as a good value option. Al Horford probably plays increased minutes if Robert Williams sits. He's 5,500 in a good spot. So certainly some interest there. Right now, he's not pulling ownership, but I expect that number would come up if Robert Williams is out. Derek White at 5,400 should play a lot. He's getting 16% ownership. Not a great point per minute guy, but at 5,400, if you're just expecting, low to mid 30s from Derek White, that's going to make him project well. And then you get to Tatum and Brown, where I don't think either one benefits all that much from the guys being out, but you do probably get a little bit in the way of increased assists for both of them without Marcus Smart out there. And we know they should both play a lot of minutes in a good spot. So this is a really appealing team. Also, you have $4,800 Grant Williams, who should play a lot of minutes. The problem is that he's now $4,800.
Yeah, I don't mind him. Like, I got him in for 35 minutes now, assuming that I'm right, and that'll be totally fine. But how do you see the relationship between Tatum and Brown? Because for right now, given the way that this game breaks out, I think Jaylen Brown is more interesting than Jason Tatum.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I prefer getting to Tatum because he's just the better fantasy guy. But at half the ownership, I think that Brown kind of just looks more appealing in tournaments. Right now we have him projected for 9% ownership with an 11% chance of being optimal, compared to Tatum projected for 17% ownership with a 14% chance of being optimal. So it kind of that basically just reflects, you're going to prefer getting to Tatum. He's going to be in the optimal lineup more often, but the field also is just getting there at, twice as often, and they're not that different in terms of optimal percentage.
You also get that shooting guard small forward eligibility for Jaylen Brown, which increases your flexibility as well. So I have those guys flip-flopped in my ownership right now, and I'm pretty happy about it. Are you on the same page? Like, it's not going to matter because the game's at 7 and we're going to have it. You on the same page with me and just assuming Robert Williams is out?
I mean, I think that the logic that you laid out makes sense.
Okay. And then who said it? Yeah, Stephen Leibowitz in chat said, and then Horford will sit tomorrow. Probably, yeah. That makes the most sense to me. Do you see any path for like a Luke Cornett, or I think there's a mild path for someone like Sam Hauser, not the best per minute guy, but if they don't want to play Justin Jackson, then they would have basically a 9-man rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hauser probably plays pretty good minutes. It's just that he's a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy. I will say that I think in large field tournaments, like, there probably shouldn't be a 26-0 gap between Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser, but Pritchard's still going to be the one that you prefer just because of who the players are that are missing.
Yeah, and we just saw Sam Hauser DNP on Saturday with Peyton Pritchard getting 26 minutes, so it at least points us in that direction. Boston's just interesting given the fact that there's no Smart, no Brogdon.
Agreed.
On the opposite side, we have the Orlando Magic, and big news for the Magic. Basically, everybody is available, including John Isaac, who is back for the first time. Haven't seen that in a while.
Since the bubble, right?
Yeah, so if it wasn't for the 2 games that he played in the bubble, his last game would have been before COVID.
That's insane.
Yeah. I don't know what the hell to do with Orlando right now. I don't know what their rotation is going to look like. I don't know how many dudes they're going to play. I think they're live to play 11 or 12 guys like constantly now, which means that the only 3 people that I could really look at, maybe you want to call it 3.5, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr. I don't think that anything is really going to change too much, although Banchero's minutes have been down a bit. There's no ownership at all coming into Orlando, which makes me like these guys in GPPs the same way that we talked about, I think, on Friday. Fultz to a degree, because I think he's just going to be out there. I just don't love him for some reason. How do you want to handle Orlando?
I don't really want to get there all that often. Obviously it's a difficult matchup against Boston, but you also just have, like you were saying, a very good chance that this team just plays like everybody as part of their rotation pretty much. And, we had talked about this earlier in the year that it was just a matter of time before Orlando turned into an absolute mess from a fantasy standpoint. So I'm with you as far as Carter, Wagner, Banchero, Fultz being the guys that if I get to anything are probably the ones that I would get to. They seem like the safest bets to at least play some sort of functional minutes. Banchero probably around 32, same for Wagner. You assume like 28 to 30 for Fultz and around 30 for Carter. So those are the guys where I would feel the best about getting there. None of them are pulling ownership, which does make them somewhat appealing in tournaments. Carter pulling the most at 6% with an 8% chance of being optimal. So going a little bit under-owned. Fultz going a little bit under-owned. They're all four of those guys are projected to go under-owned, but under-owned in the sense of like they have, a 5% chance of succeeding and they're getting 3% ownership or something like that. So very low probability plays, but decent ways to differentiate your lineup here and there. Just nothing that I'm building around though, because it's so difficult to be confident in their minutes when they're just going to play a million guys.
Yeah, I've got about 15% of Wagner and Banchero, and that seems to be par for the course for me at this point, but I'm really not mad about it if I'm going to be getting to anything from Orlando. It's not like I'm picking the random pieces. I can't imagine going to anybody else here, though. I don't know how you pick and choose. I don't have anybody projected really with enough minutes to matter. Isaac played like 16 minutes in the two games that he averaged 16 minutes in his two G League appearances. He's not playing big minutes. He's not even going to sniff big minutes. I don't know how to project anybody else for this team.
Yeah, I mean, on DraftKings, at least Isaac is center only as well. So certainly not rolling the dice there. Like the $3,900 price tag on Suggs is one when you first look and you're just like, oh man, if they gave him minutes, that looks great. But like they're just not giving him enough minutes. And that doesn't mean that they won't at any time soon, but there's just no reason to expect that it's, today getting Isaac back after Suggs played 12 minutes last game. Like there's just outside of those four guys we talked about, I don't really see a case to get to anything.
Okay. We're on the same page there. Then we can go to the Atlanta Hawks, 1-point dogs in Chicago, 239 total. Bogdanovich off the injury report. He missed Saturday's game. And then we've got a Q tag on Onyeka Okongwu, which could be interesting for John Collins just in general. But assuming everybody's back and normal for today, we did get Capella back in the starting lineup. We've got 15% ownership going to Collins, 15 going to Trey, scattered ownership going to Murray and Hunter. I actually really like DeAndre Hunter for 5,200 just because of the way the value is shaking out right now. Guy just plays a lot of minutes and kind of just feel like he's getting slept on as a GPP option. But I just like the sort of four main pieces of Atlanta, at least a little bit here against Chicago.
Yeah, and I think Capella will look a little bit better if Okongwu was out as well. He got up to about 24 minutes last game, so you got just the straight split between them. I expect that you see this just get back to what we were getting previously where, Capella was playing 27, 28 minutes and Okongwu was playing 20, 21. But at $5,500 for Capella, I certainly think there's some interest there. He's only pulling 5% ownership as well, which is nice. That number probably goes up if Okongwu gets ruled out. But one way or the other, I like Capella. Young and Collins certainly look fine. We know Collins hasn't been very good this year, but he is only $5,600 with power forward and center eligibility. So pretty easy to get to. The type of ceiling you're getting with Trae Young. I think that Bogdanovich at 5,100 with shooting guard, small forward eligibility is an interesting tournament option. He was horrible in his last game. I had a good amount of him there. It didn't come through. But when he's playing well, you're likely to get 28 to 30 minutes from him, which is not bad at 3% owned. So I have some interest there. I'm with you on DeAndre Hunter as well as just a low owned guy playing a ton of minutes.
I don't have anything else to really add for Atlanta. They're a pretty easy team to talk about at this point. On the off chance that Okongwu was out, do you expect to see any John Collins center minutes? Maybe. Or is it just Kaminsky? Yeah,
it's kind of just gone back and forth this year. I don't know which way they would go.
Yeah. Certainly, at least he either looks exactly like he did before or looks slightly better. There's no downside to it, at least for Collins. So that's helpful.
Yeah. If Okongwu was out, it can't make things worse.
All right. On the Chicago side, the Bulls are obviously without Lonzo Ball and Javonte Green. Q tag on Goran Dragic. We do get DeMar DeRozan came back on Thursday after having missed 3 straight games. DeRozan is 8,900 on DK. He's 8K on FanDuel and currently pulling 54% ownership, which, look, I think that DeMar DeRozan is in an incredible spot on FanDuel. I don't know about 55%, but it's probably closer to correct than incorrect. And I do think that he's the best option on DraftKings. Everybody else for Chicago, though, just feels like a bit overpriced.
Yeah, the price tags definitely aren't that appealing here. I mean, you have Levine the most expensive now out of DeRozan, well, out of the whole team. Going to play a lot of minutes, shooting guard, small forward eligible, but with DeRozan back and Vooch playing, it's just very difficult to pay nearly $10K for Levine. The $8,900 salary on DeRozan looks good. He's the only guy on this team pulling double-digit ownership. I think that makes sense. 1.17 DraftKings points per minute this year, 28% usage rate, 22% assist percentage, should play mid to upper 30s. So I like getting to DeRozan. In tournaments, if you can get to some Vooch at 9,100, sure, but that's a very expensive price tag for him. Don't plan on building around him or anything. Patrick Williams and Ayo Dosunmu basically just look like lineup filler, both pulling around 7%. The only guy that I think is actually a priority here is DeRozan.
I agree. And the FanDuel price, that 8K FanDuel price, is lunacy for DeRozan today. Just what are we doing here if he's going to be 8K?
It's just a broken price.
I have nothing else here for the Bulls.
Me neither.
Which means it's time to talk about PrizePicks, sponsor of this video. If you click the link in the description, head on over to PrizePicks and make a deposit. They will match that deposit up to $100. And what you're doing here is you're picking player props. You're looking to put them together on what is essentially a parlay card. Hit 5 on one card, you'll net up to 10x your entry fee. But you still get a little bit back if you get 4 or even 3 correct. So that is my recommendation. You can go upwards of 6. I don't like the payout structure for 6, so that's why I'm recommending you go to 5. You can hit multiple sports, and they can all be cross sports if you want. So you can go NFL, NBA, college basketball, soccer, tennis, tons and tons and tons of choices. Adam and I are going to touch on a few of the NBA raw points props for today. And let's start it off with a guy that I'm a little curious about. Paolo Banchero, over under 17.5 real points.
Over.
What do I have here? I have him. Yeah, I've got a pretty clean over at 21 real points. So that is a bit of a gap. How about Jason Tatum, 31.5?
Slight over.
Yeah, I got him at 31.8, so I don't know how much I'd go there. Jaylen Brown is at 27.5. I have a slight over for that one as well.
Same.
Let's see, one more. Who would be a good one to hit? Okay, this one actually provides a little bit of context for us. 28.5 for Giannis.
Over. We have 30.6.
Yeah, I have the over as well. Interesting to see there. I was curious if he was... Because that's obviously a bit lower than what you would normally be expecting if they weren't playing the Detroit Pistons today. So, and if he wasn't just out for 5 games. So interesting to see where they line up. But that's PrizePicks for you. We got plenty of content for PrizePicks on Stokastic.com. Yeah, I appreciate your response there to tag in with me. I'm happy to give credit where credit is due. There's no credit deserved for that statement. It is not a real thing. Yeah,
I mean, if you can quantify how you perceiving them being tired against Charlotte should affect their projections today, then sure. But I'm confident you can't.
In the 1 point line with the 240 total today,
right.
No, I'm good. I'm going to assume that that's taken care of. If that were the case, then Atlanta would be 8-point underdogs because we would be taking this into account. So that's not how this works. Which is the whole point of all of this. So anyway, Minnesota. This one's tricky. The Wolves are 6.5-point favorites in Houston. Houston stinks. It's so incredible. 239 total in this one. So for Minnesota, Q tag on Gobert. We have not seen Gobert for the past 3 games, so we're doing this again. Taurean Prince Q tag. Bryn Forbes Q tag. No McLaughlin, no Towns. Oddly enough, no Q tag on Anthony Edwards, so apparently we've put that behind us. 15% ownership going to Edwards and to Russell. Not much ownership coming in elsewhere. I actually don't mind getting to Gobert if he happens to be in. Probably going back to Naz Reid if Gobert happens to be out again. What do you see here for Minnesota?
Yeah, so whoever's starting at center is going to be interesting. If it's Gobert, obviously there's some risk just because of whatever the injury he's dealing with is. He came back, got hurt again, barely played, went missed a few games. So there would obviously be risk there, but he's 6,800 in a really, really good matchup. I would definitely want to get there if he's in, especially if he's only pulling the 6% ownership that we have him projected for right now. Then you get to the rest of the starting lineup, all pulling 10 to 15% ownership. Russell, Edwards, McDaniels, Anderson, all look pretty good at their respective salaries. Like you said, no Q tag on Edwards is good, but yeah, they're all just going to look good here. It's a good matchup against Houston. And then if you're getting Naz Reid starting in place of Gobert, I will just be going right back to jamming Naz Reid into pretty much every lineup that I make. When he doesn't foul, he's playing huge minutes. He's obviously a very good point per minute guy. There's still at 5,300 just no reason you wouldn't be playing Naz Reid.
I can't wait to get Gobert out, jam Naz Reid exactly like I did for Biyombo, and then have Naz Reid give Biyombo the old hold my beer. I'm going to try to foul out even faster than you did, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen for sure. I don't have much else to say here. I don't know how this was happening. Jalen Noel is popping up for me. I only gave him 16 minutes. I think it's just a testament of where the value is, but I got 10% of him on my crunch, and it's gross because even his minutes are down as of late.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably need Prince to be out to feel remotely good about that.
Right. Agreed. And however this breaks, it's going to be an interesting spot. You know why? Because Houston's garbage. And unfortunately for us today, I think we're playing a bunch of Houston and potentially even more. No Kevin Porter Jr. We've got a Q tag on Jabari Smith. He missed on Saturday. That Q tag is massive for what we have, because this could turn into a Tari Eason slate today. We've got 23% ownership coming into Alperen Şengün at 8,400. 20% coming into Kenyon Martin today at 5K. I don't really love that Kmart ownership. To me, that feels a tad high. But I think that $8,400 Şengün at 23% ownership is not only correct, but I'd like to get more.
Yeah, just looks really good, and he's going to continue to look really good for as long as Kevin Porter Jr. is out. There's two benefits too for Şengün, and I mentioned this the other day. The one is just that, Kevin Porter Jr. not being in there, you get the offense running through Şengün more, and he just produces at a higher rate. He's around 1.3 DraftKings points per minute without Porter on the floor. But the other, completely unrelated to Porter, is that we've seen increased playing time for Şengün even prior to Kevin Porter Jr. getting hurt, because barring foul trouble, Bruno Fernando's basically not been in the rotation anymore. And it's allowing you to get, instead of 28 to 30 minutes from Şengün, when he avoids foul trouble, you're getting mid to upper 30s. And so you got the increased playing time in addition to increased production without Porter. So makes him look really, really good. Also, looks marginally better if Rudy Gobert is out. I'm not going to just get away from Şengün if Gobert is in, but I would certainly prefer the Naz Reid, Luka Garza front court over the Rudy Gobert one. But either way, Şengün's going to look very good at 8,400, I think. And I'm with you as far as being happy, even if I get over the field there. I also agree on KJ Martin. I understand why he's getting ownership at 5K in a very, very appealing game. But I think we've also just mentioned a lot of other guys in that price range that are getting like half the ownership that don't look very different. The one that immediately comes to mind is DeAndre Hunter for $200 more, getting like 8% ownership or whatever it was, compared to 20% for KJ Martin. They're just similar enough players that I don't really think that gap should exist. I think the lack of ownership coming into Jalen Green is interesting as well. He is, he takes on a bigger role without Kevin Porter also. You get a huge ceiling from him, about a 33.5% usage rate without Kevin Porter Jr. on the floor this year. 32.5%, 1.03 DraftKings points per minute. I think that the ownership there is a little bit low given how appealing this game is. If you want to take some shots on a Jayshawn Tate or Tari Eason or Jabari Smith, any of those are fine as well. Jabari Smith in particular, 5,200. This is another one where, he's power forward center instead of small forward power forward. But why is $5,200 Jabari Smith getting 1/10 the ownership of 5K Kenyon Martin Jr.? Jabari Smith this year without Porter on the floor. What?
He's questionable.
Okay, so it'll come up, but we only have him with a 4% chance of being optimal too.
Okay. Yeah. I've got Jabari twice as likely to be optimal than Kenyon Martin for today.
Okay.
So
that'll probably come up then. But again, it's just a spot to pay attention to. Smith's average just shy of a fantasy point per minute without Porter on the floor this year.
Yeah. And if we lose Jabari Smith here, Jayshawn Tate, 3,800 power forward, Tari Eason, 3,800 power forward, Jayshawn Tate, $4,100 point guard, small forward. Both of those guys, I think, have the opportunity. opportunity to look better. I think Eason is probably the guy, but that eligibility for Tate would become a little interesting, and he would have the opportunity to soak up some additional playing time.
Yeah.
Houston is up in the air, man. I didn't think that $8,400 Alperen Sengun would be like a good play at 23% ownership, but to me, he very much is. I got nothing else for Houston.
Me neither.
All right, so we'll go to the Charlotte Hornets, who are 7-point dogs in Utah for today. LaMelo Ball, questionable. Oddly enough, he hurt his ankle again on this past Wednesday, missed Saturday's game. I didn't realize the Gordon Hayward came back on Saturday. He played 25 minutes. Doubtful tag still on Cody Martin, and no Kelly Oubre again. Single-digit ownership across the board for the Hornets. The highest-owned Charlotte Hornet for today is very obviously backup center Mark Williams at 9%. And what's crazy is I don't think that's all that crazy. Like, I think that he probably should get a little bit of love as a $3,100 backup center. I kind of like PJ Washington at 6K. I think he's least affected by anybody coming in or anybody being out. But do you see anything for Charlotte and what should be a good matchup against Utah?
So as far as the Mark Williams goes, at 3,100, if he is the backup center, I do think he's a good play. The biggest risk is just that you could just get the Nick Richards game that we haven't gotten in a while. They've sort of been going back and forth between those guys. The last few games have been Williams, though. So I assume it's Williams today. And at 3,100, there is a nice ceiling there. He's about a 1.1 to 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy that should play 16 to 18 minutes, assuming he plays. But there is always just the DNP risk with him. But as far as the starters go, if LaMelo is back, difficult to get to him at 9,800, but would also make Dennis Smith Jr. at 4,600 not look particularly good. Smith played 27 minutes off the bench last game without LaMelo. Certainly would have some interest there if LaMelo is out. I don't like a lot on this team. PJ Washington's up to 6K, which is fine, but nothing too exciting. We do have him projected to go a bit on their own. Plumlee at 6,700, same kind of thing. You know, he's typically playing 30 to 32 minutes. He's a good point per minute guy, but the price is pretty much where it should be. Rozier is going to look a little bit worse if LaMelo's back. Certainly more interested in him if LaMelo's out at 8K. Same goes for Hayward at 5,300. So if LaMelo's in, I don't really like anything here outside of maybe getting some Plumlee, Washington, or Williams. If Ball is out, then I think, you know, you probably get to a little bit of Rozier and Dennis Smith Jr. and Gordon Hayward as well.
I went to 30 minutes on Hayward. Does that seem about right?
Yeah.
I don't really have a great feel for it. I didn't realize how bad he is now.
Yep.
He's a 0.81 guy in my model as a baseline. Like, that's not what I was expecting to see when I looked at the column. So, and then we go to Utah, who are basically at full strength. We're still waiting on Kelly Olynyk to come back. He should be back probably in like a week or two. Otherwise, we've got a ton of ownership coming into the Jazz. And there would be more if Lauri Markkanen wasn't priced like it was FanDuel making the prices. Like if Markkanen was 8,600 like he is on FanDuel and the $9,400 price was on that site and this was just balanced like you would expect, you'd be getting 20% ownership to almost all of these guys. We're at 15 for Clarkson, 27 for Conley, another 15 for Beasley, another 15 for Kessler, another 20 for Colin Sexton. It's really hard to get to Markkanen at 9,400, but in a matchup against Charlotte, you know, it's about as good as you're going to get out there. I think all of that ownership coming into the Jazz is very reasonable.
Yeah, agreed. Like it's a little bit higher than it probably should be. You know, 30% coming into Mike Conley at 5,300, 20% chance of being optimal though. So clearly a high probability play, just getting a little bit more ownership than he should. But he's around a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy that should give you 30-ish minutes. It's going to make him look good. Sexton at 4,400 with his playing time ramping up is going to look good. No problems going back to Walker Kessler after a very disappointing game last time out. You kind of just like, you knew those games, you know, those games are just going to be there. It's how things work. But more often than not, you're likely to be getting 28 minutes or so from him. And he's a very good point per minute guy in a very good spot. So I like getting back there. Beasley at 4,900 is fine. Like you said, out of the main rotation guys, the only guy that I think is really difficult to get to is Markkanen at 9,400 on DraftKings. And that's still, I mean, the upside is there. Like he's got a massive ceiling. He's been insanely good this year offensively, but it's just that, you know, when you put him in the same price range as guys, you know, like Trae Young, for example, you're just never going to be able to prioritize Markkanen. Jared Vanderbilt, 4,600, also not getting any ownership. You got 18 minutes from him last game, even in a game where Kessler played 24 and a half. So that's kind of interesting. Like I fully expected that when you did get those 24-minute Walker Kessler games, it would mean you were getting a 24-minute Jared Vanderbilt game, but they closed the first half with Markkanen. With Markkanen at center. So it was Conley, Sexton, Clarkson, Beasley, Markkanen. I don't know how often they'll go to that small lineup, but you certainly can against Charlotte. And it just makes me less inclined to roll the dice on Jared Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I gave Markkanen 2 minutes at center just because of that. It seems to be in the cards, at least at this point. Scares the shit out of me. At least for not only just for Kessler, but obviously for Vanderbilt. He becomes a guy that I don't think that I could really get to. But I have about 20% of all of those main guys save for Markkanen, and I feel good about it. Like, that's just, when you're going to face Charlotte, it's a really, really nice spot. Anything else in this one?
Nope.
It's a pretty easy slate to talk about so far. Like, we haven't really had anything that's up in, like, I feel like you and I are pretty much on the same page for everything that we're hitting today.
Yeah, which doesn't make me feel very confident.
It should. It should be like your favorite thing in the world. You know what? I think your favorite thing in the world is our new NBA Bet Pro package. I assume it's your favorite thing because that is the content that you do now. I assume we'll have some Bet Pro videos out today.
I will.
Make sure you guys are checking those out on the Odd Shopper channel. Our Bet Pro product is based on the projections that we have created from Alex Baker. You know him as Osimo. Shanzon, you know him as Shanzon. Steve Buzzard, you know him as DeColts. You can get a 7-day free trial for our NBA Bet Pro package. It's going to be about $16 a week after that, $56 a month if you want to go a little bit bigger. The ROI over the lifespan of what we've had for Bet Pro is positive right now at 2.2%, which may not sound like a ton of ROI, but it is much better than you would expect. That's a $2,700 profit if you only put $100 on every bet. This is a product that should make people money, so I think that you guys should certainly be checking it out. We give you expected value calculations, our win percentages, and then you're going to have just simple recommendations coming from people like Adam in the video. He'll walk you through what this NBA Bet Pro package is showing you for a particular day. But again, it's based on all of our DFS projections. We're already putting the time in. Why not take a look at our NBA product from a sports betting perspective? 2 more games to go. This one's at 10 o'clock. San Antonio Spurs are 9-point dogs in Portland, 240 total. For the Spurs, not much to say here. Same guys that are normally in are in. There's not really a ton of ownership going in. It's just casting a wide net. It's about 10% to the guys that always play: Keldon Johnson, Trey Jones, Sohan, Jakob Poeltl. And then you get another 10% for Zach Collins as the backup center in the Mark Williams role for this one, or add a couple other guys for that sort of situation. We'll get one for Portland on the opposite side. Do you see any priorities here for San Antonio?
Not particularly. It's kind of just been a difficult team to get to, at least in terms of prioritizing one individual guy. Like, you have 10% ownership coming into 4 different guys here, and then 9% going to Poeltl. But I just can't look at it and be like, oh, like Jakob Poeltl's the clear priority, or Keldon Johnson is the clear priority. They're all just pretty much priced where they should be. You do get a very nice ceiling from Keldon Johnson without Devin Vassell, 30+% usage rate without him on the floor this year. Good matchup as well. So at 7,400, I think that's fine. Poeltl at 6,200, I think is going a little bit underowned. We have him with a 14% chance of being optimal, 9% projected ownership. Assuming no foul trouble, you're likely getting at least 26 minutes, if not more. Very good point per minute guy, around 1.2 DraftKings points per minute. Trey Jones is about a fantasy point per minute guy, playing 30 minutes at 6,300. Sohan falls into that. He's a cheap forward, and we need those range, which is why he's pulling 12% ownership. Collins in non-Poeltl lineups makes sense just because he is 3,800. He's a good point per minute guy, and if Poeltl gets in foul trouble, you are likely to get more minutes for Collins. But there's not one individual guy that I would point to and just say like, oh yeah, this is the guy that I expect to have in 30% of my lineups or something.
Shout out to Braden chat, gifted 5 Stokastic YouTube subs. Always good to see. So I know the people are going to be happy about that one. Appreciate seeing that stuff. Yeah, I don't have much to say here about San Antonio. They're, I don't know, they're sort of like Orlando at this point, but the starters don't really play a shit ton. I don't really know what they're doing. They just don't have as much young talent. They just have garbage all over the place. And then we go to Portland. They're on a back-to-back, so we don't really know what they're doing. They don't really make any changes. Although Chauncey had a line last night post-game about mixing up the starting lineup. I don't know what that would be. I have a guess. I don't like it, but For right now, it's Portland taking on San Antonio, and I like Portland the same way that I liked them yesterday. We got 20% ownership coming into Lillard, 20 to Josh Hart, 10 to Simons and to Grant and to Nurkic. Drew Eubanks only getting 1.5% ownership, which I'm just going to put out there right now, looks really dumb in comparison to some of the other centers that are sub 4K that aren't getting it. Drew Eubanks, by the way, played 30 minutes last night because Yusuf Nurkic only played 16. That's how this works. Definitely like Drew Eubanks at 3,200. There's no way around that one for me. If I'm willing to go to Mark Williams or willing to go to Zach Collins, there's no difference.
Well,
Happy to go to
difference, but
you know what I mean. Like it's the same principle of a play where
it's the same principle. You just need more minutes. Like which is a big difference because at Mark Williams, like average production, if he just plays 16 to 18 minutes, you can get a big game from Mark Williams. You're typically not getting that from Drew Eubanks in his normal playing time.
Yeah, 0.95 guy for Drew Eubanks. Mark Williams has been like at 0.05, something like that.
Eubanks is 0.8 and Williams is like 1.2.
0.94 in my model, 0.95 over the past 30 days.
0.81 for the season.
How's that possible? You sure?
Assuming that Add More Funds numbers are correct, yeah.
Okay, so not sure.
So they have Mark Williams at 1.26 this season. And Eubanks at whatever I just said, 0.81.
Yeah, I got the Mark Williams one looks better. But Team Drew Eubanks. Anyway. Talk to me about the Portland starters.
They just all are going to look good. The first thing that stands out is that Nurkic is only pulling 8% ownership right now. That probably comes up. We have him with a 15% chance of being optimal, but assuming that he plays and there's nothing like weird going on there, 7K for him is going to look really good in this spot. Obviously very disappointing game yesterday, dealing with fouls and just not playing a lot, but if he's starting, there's no reason to think he's not playing his normal like 28, 29 minutes, which can make him look good at 7K. Everybody else is pulling ownership and deservedly so. Damian Lillard at 10-1, just giving you 37, 38 minutes. Obviously a very, very good point per minute guy. And then you have cheap price tags across the board everywhere else. Josh Hart at 5,100, Simons at 65, Grant at 67. We know that Grant and Simons both take a hit in their production, as you would expect when Damian Lillard is in, but you're still talking about, 35 plus minutes typically from Anthony Simons. You're typically getting, 35 plus from Jeremy Grant as well. So just from a playing time standpoint, in a very appealing matchup, those guys make sense. Looking at the bench pieces, there's not too much to be excited about. I am with you on Eubanks where, if Zach Collins and Mark Williams are going to be close to 10% owned, and Eubanks is going to be 1 to 2. He's fine. Certainly don't play him with Nurkic. I do prefer those other guys just because they're better point per minute guys, but the same sort of opportunity exists here where if Nurkic gets in foul trouble, you could get a very cheap Eubanks. Nas Little's been playing relatively well since returning. Don't know if he'll play on the back-to-back. Still only played 13 minutes yesterday anyway, though. Gary Payton II only played 16. So there's not really much from the bench that I can be very interested in because the starters play so many minutes.
So on the off chance that they make a starting lineup change, I mentioned it on the process. If they do it, I think they should do it the same way that Philly just did it. It should be Simons to the bench to stagger more with Lillard, and you bring in Gary Payton. I don't know if they're going to do that, but could make Payton interesting if you see that kind of happen at 3,100.
Yeah, if Payton starts, then sure.
Yeah. I actually think that they would do it for Hart, which is weird, and I don't really understand why that would work out. But you would also see a bit of I would assume you would see a slight usage bump to Jeremy Grant if they brought him in for Simons as well.
Most likely, yeah. But for Hart, it shouldn't matter.
No, wouldn't matter at all. They're basically the same guy from a usage perspective. But I thought it was interesting that the quote was out there from Chauncey. I wouldn't expect them to actually do anything different, but if they're going to do it, that seems like the more natural spot. Final game. The Memphis Grizzlies, 1-point favorites in Sacramento, 244 total for the Grizz. They are on a back-to-back. I don't know if there's going to be an impact from that back-to-back. I don't have a great feel for it. So I have everybody in. We've got about 19% ownership coming into Morant, 16 to Bane, minimal everywhere else. I'm happy to get to really anything that starts along with a Brandon Clark backup scenario if need be. I still just find it really difficult to get to Memphis, although this spot should be the time where you want to do it. I just don't know how to project the starters' minutes.
Yeah, I mean, for one, we need to wait on an injury report here because we've seen more than once Memphis just bench multiple people on their back-to-backs. But assuming everybody plays, 9,700 from Morant is going to look good. The downside to him is that he just doesn't play as many minutes as similarly priced guys. Like, you just can't project him to play Damian Lillard minutes or Trae Young minutes. But he is an excellent point per minute guy, which helps make up for that. It is a fantastic spot as well. So 9,700 from Morant. He is pulling 20% ownership. No real issue there. Desmond Bane at 7,200, assuming you're getting low 30s in minutes from him, is going to look good. Once again, Steven Adams just not pulling ownership, and I don't really know why. 6.5% ownership at 5,900, without foul trouble or blowout, you're likely getting about 30 minutes from Adams. Should have plenty of success in this spot, plenty of rebound opportunities. He just always goes under owned, and I don't really get why. Jaren Jackson at 7,300 gives you plenty of upside at low ownership as well. If he plays, tons of block upside there, which adds some volatility. And then Dylan Brooks, sucks offensively, but he is 4,800 and shooting guard, small forward. So if, once again, like, we have guys pulling, if like KJ Martin's going to pull 20% ownership at 5K, there's no reason that a $4,800 Dylan Brooks against the Kings should only be 5% owned. They're just not that different in terms of projection. And then, like you said, you get Brandon Clark as the backup center to Adams, where if Adams does get in foul trouble, you get a power forward in Clark that looks really good.
Yeah. I don't have anything else here for Memphis. They're pretty easy to talk about. They're just tricky. I want to see them all play in like 36 minutes, and all their prices would be quite a bit higher, but
wait till the postseason.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And as far as, this is a relatively easy team too. Like, if Ja Morant rests, jam in Tyus Jones. If Steven Adams sits, jam in Brandon Clark. If Jackson sits, you're probably getting Santi Aldama in the starting lineup. But in particular, the Clark and Jones pieces, like, they just become no-brainers if Morant is out or Adams is out.
And we will get all of that in the injury report when it gets released. So hopefully it just comes out clean. Don't want to deal with it, but especially with this 10:30 start and the fact that it's a matchup in Sacramento. And we need to get to Sacramento today. Chimezie Metu is questionable. Shouldn't really have an effect on things, but the prices and the minutes that these guys have been playing lately, they certainly have an effect on things. 10% ownership going to Fox. Sabonis not getting a ton of love, but he's the only one that's sort of like priced appropriately. 10% ownership going to Harrison Barnes, who's been playing big minutes. 31% ownership going to Keegan Murray at 4,400. And for the first time since the first week of the season, he's getting that ownership. But this time, I actually think he deserves it. Kevin Huerter pulling some love. Malik Monk getting a little bit of love. It's hard to not want to get to Sacramento today.
Yeah, they're just playing huge minutes recently. We know that they've been very happy with Keegan Murray's performances recently, which I'm sure has had an impact on that playing time trending up. You're never going to project him for 40 minutes, but I think you can pretty comfortably expect low 30s at least from him. And at 4,400, that's just still going to make him look good. And so that ownership makes sense. He is going over owned. We have him with a 16% chance of being optimal at 31% ownership. It's certainly a spot where you can find some pivots and get away from him if you need to within individual lineups. But from a value standpoint, he does project very, very well. De'Aaron Fox at 8,700 playing big minutes. Sabonis at 10,600 playing big minutes. They're both difficult to prioritize in that there's plenty of a relatively high opportunity cost to their positions. There's plenty of alternatives, but they're both going to look good just based on how many minutes they're playing. You're getting a lot of run for Barnes and Huerter as well. Malik Monk has not been playing minutes as a result of the starters now just playing a ton. You got 20 minutes last game from Monk. Previously, you had gotten like 15, 10, 15, 15. At 4K, if he plays well and steals minutes from somebody like Keegan Murray or Kevin Huerter, there's still that path to a big game for him. The issue I have is that he's already pulling like 9 to 10% ownership. And I think you kind of at this point have to expect that you're getting like, 18 to 20 minutes more so than 22 to 24.
Yeah, I went to 20 on Monk. How many minutes are you willing to give Murray here? He's the only one that I really struggled with because his minutes are new, whereas Barnes has been playing 36, 37 minutes a game.
Yeah, I think 32 on Murray makes sense.
That's exactly what I have, so that makes me feel good. But when I look at it, it's like, should that be 33 or 34?
Right.
That's where when it gets to 34, that's when you start seeing that ownership making extra sense. Now, at 32 minutes, I still get him, and I'm getting him at that same mark as the public. So I don't feel bad about it at all. I feel like I'm on the spot.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, we have 33.
Okay. Yeah.
Which, again, I'm perfectly fine with.
I could end up there. Interesting slate today. Like
Yeah,
it
it is.
didn't seem
Should
like
be a
we have
fun
any
one.
like giant question marks or anything.
Yeah, other than what Memphis is going to do.
Yeah. So you got Bet Pro videos coming out in a bit?
Yep.
All righty. It's going to be a good one, folks. Contenders are out. Go back and watch the process as well. Go through every single one of these rotations. It's going to be a good one. You're back for the deeper dive, right? That's you and Laffy.
It's me and somebody. Yeah, it's Monday, so Luffy.
You and Laffy. You get Greg and Eric 4 live before lock. That's it, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Hit the like button on the way out the door. This has been a good one. We will talk to you later. Thank you to PrizePicks for being the sponsor, but good luck tonight, everybody. Peace.